Welcome to Gray Overload. I'm Anthony, and Intel has announced the 9th generation Intel Core desktop processors. So the 9th generation mainstream desktop and HEDT processors from Intel are announced now, with the mainstream desktop processors being leaked for the last couple months. One big change that I really like is this solar thermal interface material to the IHS, that heat spreader. So now you should get much better temperatures overall on that processor. I'm excited to see some of the results from that from a lot of the reviewers online when they get those processors to review, and how well it works and how well Intel has improved since last generation when it wasn't soldered. So very interested by that. But let's dive into the mainstream desktop here and start there. I'll keep my comments about naming to hopefully a minimum until the end. I will try my best, but the naming is really frustrating to me right now. But the i9-9900K, and that's going to be an 8-core 16-thread processor, about $488 according to Intel's sheet here. And I will post the sheet in the description below so you guys can go and take a look at that as well. And that's going to be the only processor here that has hyperthreading in the mainstream desktop, is this 8-core 16-thread part, the i9. But then you jump to the i7-9700K, and that's going to be 8 cores and 8 threads. So you get 2 more cores over the previous generation 8700K, but you don't get the hyperthreading. So this is the one that I'm going to be interested to see performance on based upon what applications you run. Now that's going to be for about $374. Now Intel then has the i5-9600K, and this is going to be 6-core 6-thread at $262. So that's about the pricing there. What's really cool is that really good actually, is that these processors have hardware protections for variant 3 of Meltdown and the L1 terminal fault speculative execution that was out as well. So those two have hardware hardenings of those two vulnerabilities. So that's really great that Intel got those out and into there. And everything else, even in the HEDT models, I mentioned this now, are all otherwise microcode and software for everything else. So the HEDT models did not get those hardware hardenings for the speculative execution. It was only the mainstream desktop. So really good that Intel was able to get those in there at least. But then we have a new chipset as well, and so this new chipset adds some new features that Intel, which is the Z390 that chipset that Intel released here. But if you want to use one of these processors, go ahead, buy it. Probably need an upgraded BIOS, and you can throw it in your current 300 series motherboard as well, for basically, as Intel said, more consumer options. Well, it's just natural upgradability. I like that Intel, I like to have a socket supported and the processor supported in it more than just one generation. It's nice. I like that. But then let's jump into the HEDT. And this is, I like the mainstream. You can do a lot more with the mainstream. I'm sure gaming is going to be great on them. And like I said, I'm going to be interested to see all the performance of them. But I really like the HEDT. This is where stuff gets pushed, where new markets get and new developments happen, because people can push their computers to the limits. And Intel released a lot about these, and they just basically made it look like last cycle's generation ones too. So we have a i9-9880XE processor. So this is going to retail for, and this is 18 cores, 36 threads, and it's going to retail for about $1,979 for what there is. So the current one was the 7980XE. Now we just jump up to the 9980XE. A little bit better speeds, everything else. Intel, I'm sure Intel refined it a little bit, made it better. And this all goes down through, and I'll run through these quick, because then you got the 16 core, which is i9-9960X. Then we have the 14 core, which is the i9-9940X. And then we have the 12 core, which is the i9-9920X. And then we have the 10 core, which is the i9-9900X. So now we're in 9900X for a 10 core 20 thread part. And as you remember before, we have the i9-9900K for an 8 core 16 thread part in the mainstream desktop. Right? Not confusing at all. I'm sure. But then it gets really interesting, and part of me thinks the reason why Intel announced these two other processors besides the 18 through 10 core line, that kind of copies it down, is that they're binning some processors. They're at full capacity, maxing out, and they're trying to get all the good operating dies out, no matter what core count they are. That's part of the reason why they released these two other ones. But you have the i9 9820X, and this is a 10 core 20 thread part, and lower clocks than the i9 9900X. I said i9 9820X, right? I didn't accidentally put K there, I hope. These are X parts, and that's going to be for about $900. So that's interesting that they put a i9 there. But this is the more interesting one, I think, which is the i7 9800X, which is an 8-core 16-thread part for $589, and it's an i7 part. So it's an i7 part with 8-core 16 threads, so it has hyper-threading. So I guess an i7 part has hyper-threading if you go to the HEDT models, but I digress. I said I was going to keep naming for the end, right? So, these are, Intel's HEDT models, and I believe that these are released sometime next month or later this month, someplace in there. And so it's nice to see a nice refresh here on this line, next generation from Intel in HEDT. I know I deal a lot with building a lot of computers for people in HEDT, and that's important. I also, spend time building computers for the mainstream, but I'll get to naming in a second, but overall, we got one more processor to get to, and this is the big one. I think this is what everyone was looking forward to, is a 5 gigahertz 28-core processor that Intel was going to release with 56 threads. It just sounded amazing, almost too good to be true. And yes, it was too good to be true, but it is a 28-core part that we are going to be able to get our hands on, that has better clocks, about 600 megahertz higher, I believe, on the base clock than the 8180 Xeon that's out there, the really expensive, $8,000 processor. But this is the Xeon W3175X processor, 28 cores. It's supposed to be a powerhouse. It's not going to be the 5 gigahertz part that we all had hoped for, that Intel was going to do. I say that sarcastically. But it will ship in December, so we're still a few months out of this processor, or depending upon how you look at it, or maybe a couple months. So, but what's really cool is that 6-channel DDR4 that supports up to 512 gigabits of memory, and I know in a few applications already that this is a big deal, that I know over users want that extra memory. So I'm excited to see how this actually operates in those applications, and that's what I'm excited about this processor. It's 255 watts. Pricing, I did not see any pricing from Intel, but I'm sure it's going to be expensive, which might put a damper on how excited I am of being able to address all that memory, because one, memory costs a lot, and two, the processor is going to probably cost a lot too. So really interested about that. But my thoughts on naming: I wish Intel would have stuck with the i7 with hyper-threading the mainstream desktop, and did maybe a different i7 if you wanted one without, or even just did an i7 with hyper-threading and an i5 with 8 cores, 8 threads. I think that would have been a great alternative to their naming scheme, where they're adding the i9 to mainstream. I think really starting to confuse, first of all, me. Naming schemes, I'm leaving AMD out of this right now, because between them and Intel, it's bad enough. But to confuse your high-end HEDT market with the mainstream desktop is going to be really confusing. And introducing that i7 in the HEDT is not good, Intel. Just make that HEDT market all i9s. And don't reuse numbers from the different ones. Like, I know that there's an X at the end, I know that there's a K at the end, but some people looking it up may not see that right away and may order the wrong processor here. It's just a little frustrating, Intel, of how you were able to, release, and these are probably going to be great performing parts, and I'm really excited about them, but then you go mess it up with the names and not keep things separate. They're different classes. If I want HEDT, I'm going i9, right? I'm going to put that extra performance out there. If I want the mainstream desktop, I'm going to get the best gaming processors with the fastest clocks out there because I need that single threaded performance sometimes with those super high clocks, and that's going to be my i7s. And then if I need to drop down a little bit from that i5, and then I got the i3. I just feel like there's a better naming scheme out there than what you have. I do kind of like the AMD one where they just went Threadripper and had a whole, for HEDT, have a whole different name. Maybe Intel needs to look at something like that. There's got to be a better thing to keep everything more organized, so we don't. I like 3 stages for people to choose from. What are you trying to do? It's easy to slot a person into when they tell me what they want to use their computer for, which one, i7, i5, i3, right? It was great. Mainstream, done. Then if they want to talk about HEDT, I could go and then, critique on what they kind of wanted and how much performance they wanted and go through that. Right now, it's getting more and more confusing. And with how I have to explain things to people all the time out there, Intel, come on, just smooth it out for me. Just a little bit, make it a little bit easier. I would appreciate that and make it easier for other people to understand. But I do want to thank everyone for supporting Gray Overload and helping this channel grow. I know I didn't get a video out as recently as I want to. I'm working on some stuff to make sure that they get out better time cadence. So, but it is still warm out in Wisconsin here. So I've been doing a lot of yard work, trying to get my yard all cleaned up before winter, because once winter starts, I don't have that opportunity. So with us just getting the house about a month or so, just over a month ago, I've been putting a lot of work into there. But hopefully once this is all settled down, I get more time to create more videos for you viewers here, which I really appreciate doing, and I really appreciate all your views and your support as well. So I want to thank you for watching. Thank you for taking the time to support Gray Overload. As I said, I really appreciate it. And don't forget to like and subscribe.